So, all right, the first question was about how do we help students deal with fear, because that's a biggie. Um, and I find when we get into this topic, I I find that we're bringing up things that actually serve us too. Even if you get to that point where you're the cool cucumber on the airplane every time, you're still going to have these jumps where it's a demo, right? Yeah, I've done a lot of those where jumps into weird places or something where I was downright just about crapping my pants, and I find to go back to the same things that I do with students, just do it to me, in terms of the processes. It makes a difference. And people say, "Well, I read your book or anything else." That was one of his comment there, and yeah, there's, I could write 100 books on the topic of dealing with fear, and there's going to be more. But one of the things that I've recognized, and maybe you guys have too, is that a lot of fear comes up from not having enough information, not having enough rehearsal of the information that you already have, and not knowing the specifics of this jump very well. You get brain lock. It's one of the things that sort of segues, and somebody had asked about, brain freeze on a skydive, or you got a four-way, you've been training, you did the dirt diving, everything's all in there, and you jump out of the plane and you go, do you know this single? So you got legs out, legs in. This is brain lock, right? So your friends can say, go over here, grab on his leg, with their, sign language. I think it all, we have to address all these avenues, We got to teach more, and that's not like, say you've got 30 minutes to train people. It's not like you can cram more into that 30-minute session. If anything, I would say teach less over that 30 minutes and then add another 30 on top of it, maybe after a break, that kind of thing, so that people have an opportunity to process it. They have an opportunity to think it through and come up with additional questions. And they start to feel confident in the information that they already have. That's a biggie. It's been a while since I was a skydiving student, but I remember vividly that feeling of like, I think I know everything I need to know, but what about all that stuff that I don't know about? And that will always exist. I mean, have you guys ever had a malfunction that you didn't know could happen? I've had a lot of those.
Oh dear God.
Like where you had no plan for what to do under these circumstances. And so I think that's one of the other things that's sort of outside of the fill their cup with information, train them physiologically, right, where you actually get them to dirt dive, where they're in the body aspect of this stuff, the muscle memory, as we say. But what do you deal with what's left over? The question marks of, what if I'm doing my first crew and I get into a wrap? What if a line gets wrapped on my foot? What if, crazy stuff, all right? So here's an example of that. My good friend Luke, who I saw, he was in my course about 2 months ago in Michigan, went out for a wingsuit jump. Done it lots of times. It's, it wasn't a borrowed suit. It was the plane he's used to, the whole thing. And he got on the step of the 182, which is hard to do with a wingsuit on. And his booty slipped over the leading edge of the step. Did you hear about this? So Ross is nodding. You've heard about this one? And there he was hanging upside down from his foot. And it dragged on for 45 minutes. Flying around, and he's trying to cut it with his hook knife and the pilot's trying to shake him off, and it's sunset load. And so, he had a breakthrough, and he was surprised how quickly it occurred, where his mind slipped out of the worry, I hope something doesn't happen kind of mode, like when we're preparing for a jump. That's a normal thing that everybody deals with. Every student is going to deal with that. Every skydiver that, that's going into a new environment is going to feel an elevated level of fear. But that's, I would call it preparatory fear. But then it's happened, I'm hanging under the malfunction, or in this case, I'm dangling from the Cessna. He found that his mind got quiet. The time slowed down. That he was able to see the details and stop and think it through and go, wait a minute, but what if I was to, when it's actually happening, you're not that scared. As a matter of fact, you tend to sort of sober up from the expectations, and you're seeing the situation as it is, and we tend to calm down. Um, and so I think to remind people that that's a human skill, you know, that you're able to slow yourself down and think more clearly and solve your problems in a creative way, right? And he managed to get out of the situation surprisingly, and walked away from it. Stood up his landing, as a matter of fact, landed off way
How
way
did he get out of it?
well, basically, he did enough damage to the booty of his suit with the hook knife that the pilot managed to dive the airplane, gather a lot of airspeed, and pull up, and it just tore his booty off. After 45 minutes, he's in free fall, but by then, he was hanging upside down from his suit with the weight of his body on his neck here, and so his arms had consequently gone numb. So he found himself in free fall. He said it was a splendid sensation. He'd already surrendered to just, it'll be what it'll be. If I'm going to land in, dragging by the airplane, which I have another friend who did, he was fine too. Um, he he just found that he surrendered and everything was fine in his mind. He was peaceful. And I saw his GoPro video where he relaxed and looked upside down at the sunset for the longest time, just looking at the sunset, hanging from an airplane. And finally he's broken free and it felt even better. And he went to pull and he looked at his arm and he said it looked like spaghetti because it was numb. And he ended up needing to wait for his Cypress to fire, which is very low. I mean, I'm a fan of people increasing the altitude, but even if you've got it 950 or 1050, it's still very low. But he somehow managed under canopy with those just seconds that he had to get his arms kind of woken up enough that his bad arm managed to get his good arm up and got one finger in the toggle, and then he got one finger in the other, and he unstowed, flared, and landed.
Stand up landing. Oh my God.
Stand up landing in a backyard. And so, everybody was worried about him beyond belief. Everybody was terrified, crying. They watched this whole thing happen when he was falling, and they were going through the real suffering, the expectation aspect of fear, not the personal, subjective experience of it. And he got out of the car when the cops brought him back to the drop zone. And everybody was just shocked that he was just smiling and hey, he said, what up, bitches? that was the first thing he said. And so I think that's an important thing, is that we have to recognize that the fear won't kill us. And so to remind a student that being scared is perfectly normal, it's a very sane response because it's your body that makes you scared. Your body recognizes a situation, it compares it to a belief structure, which we can augment with further training because you change your belief about yourself in terms of your ability by training more, right? By knowing more, by looking at the details of your gear and understanding every aspect of it. And so to sum that aspect of it up, to not fight against the fear, I think is a big one. To remind students, it's fine as you are. This nervous is normal. All the other students, they're just as nervous as you. The question is, are you going to be the one that lets go of the fear aspect of it and focuses on doing your job? What's your job? Sitting in the plane, what's your job? Jump run, what's your job? And so you stay in your lane at this chapter of the event and not try to take it all in at once, because that's when we slip into the expectation fear. We're not in the here and now. And the body just keeps doing what it does. The ego structures, that's the way I think of it, is the body self is trying to protect itself. And it's not helping because it doesn't see the bigger picture of how powerful you are to implement your survival plans, whatever that is. You'll do what you need to do. And the fear isn't going to make a difference one way or another, other than the go or no go. Once you're out of the plane, it's kinetic. But if there's a no go in your body, where you're like, I just don't feel it. I'm nervous. The winds, and then you say, okay, what belief is making me feel nervous about this? Well, it's windy, and I saw that guy have a collapse last week, and he broke his leg, right? And so there is a belief structure that this is the same as that. And that's the part we have to be really critical about. Is this a sane response to an actual situation, or is this I'm into expectation fear where we get, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost a prejudice. In other words, when I see something that reminds me of something else, I have a prejudice because I'm expecting it's going to be the same as that is. People are prejudices against that rig. Oh, I don't want to jump that student rig, right? Remember when you're a student? You don't want to jump that one because it's unlucky or something. I don't like jumping on a Tuesday, or I don't like jumping with red socks, or what do you? So I think that to add a level of sanity through processing of what belief about myself in the world is causing this. That's kind of an existential way to look at it, but it's also very pragmatic because that helps you with your risk management analysis. Is this stupid or is this just novel? You're doing your first 10 way. Am I nervous because I'm going to die? No, I'm nervous because I think I'm going to maybe embarrass myself. And that's fine. That's fine. Because it doesn't kill you. Your friends aren't going to beat you up if you go low, or don't make it to the formation. And they're probably going through a lot of the same things you are too. A little bit of the picture your audience in their underpants sort of a thing, to recognize a compassionate aspect that even that guy that looks so cool, he's so calm, he's the most experienced guy, he's dealing with his own nerves too. He's just maybe, what?
Yeah, like the time, like you told me the story that really strong guy went on that thing where it spun you. He came down trembling.
Oh yeah.
You told me that story.
Yeah.
It's similar.
Yep, it's true. Thanks. Yeah. It's the one mic I can't mute. But he always contributes good stuff. Other things about helping people deal with the fear, things that maybe we know, but maybe we should implement more. Talk slower to your students. And same thing for yourself. When you're nervous, you'll notice you tend to pick up the rate at which you talk. The tempo of it. Is it sing-songy like Swedish, or are you like da, 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 that's nervous talking. How are you moving? Are you, So in other words, as I'm teaching, if I look like I'm busy, nervous teacher, instructor, tandem instructor, I find that I'm contagious, and so I have to go all the way over to uber slow, in the way that I move through the plane, in the way, hey, there's more kids. Joshua, look, there's kids.
Hello.
Julian's daughter. Hello. Oh, she couldn't see you. So, there's so much more that I could talk about, but those are the first things that come to my mind, just as a teacher in helping people deal with the nervous aspect of it, that have been helping. But I think the last one I want to drop in there is to remind them that they're in power of everything that happens here. They're in power of their emotions. They're in power of whether they jump or not. This isn't a peer pressure thing. You choose to leave the airplane. The tandem masters love to tell that joke. No sounds a lot like go. But the truth is we don't do that. We can't push them out of the plane because we know if somebody's really nervous, is going to make a total disaster of things, because that's all they're capable of doing is making a mess of things. And so to get them into a better mood, to be light yourself, to be lighthearted, telling some jokes can be helpful as long as they're not the off-color, dark humor sort of things about splatting or whatever. I don't think that's helpful. But at the same time, if you've got some good jokes to get them giggling, at the very least, it's a litmus test to see if they're so nervous that you might have a problem here. Because if they don't laugh at your joke, either it's a bad joke, which is possible, especially dad jokes, right? Or they're so nervous that they've lost control of themselves, and they're full on catastrophizing ego self has taken the wheel. And so to soothe them is the answer, I believe, to sort of, I mean, for me, what I try to do when I'm sitting next to that really nervous student is to be as loving as I possibly can, to be as compassionate as I possibly can. Not rushing them at all, and not sort of getting them to force their way through it, but instead to sort of relax into it and show them that somebody can be, through your good example, somebody can be calm under these circumstances, not just calm but happy, because that's where skill comes from, right? You got to be in a good mood to kick butt, whatever it is.